Welcome back, and now we dive into Family Check. And last month was International Recovery Month, and if you remember well, or if you were tuned in last Monday, we started the conversation on recovery. And today joining me yet again is Mr. Boniface Ndirango, who is the chairperson, Addiction Prevention and Recovery Association of Kenya, as well as the head of Leeds Eden House Group. And today he is here for us to get deeper into this conversation, because drug addiction is a menace in this country, and we need to talk about it, as 1.7 million people in the country abuse multiple drugs. So today we try look at the solutions. What are the solutions to addiction? And Mr. Boniface is here, and he will be taking me through that, as he is someone who has been addicted to several drugs. If you were in last week, you know that he told us that he was abusing multiple drugs, 10 drugs to be specific, including heroin, and he was able to get out of that, and he is now a recovering addict, 20 years on. So he is just the right person for us to talk to about the solutions to addiction. Mr. Boniface, welcome to Good Morning Kenya yet again.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vivian.
How are you feeling this morning?
Very good, very good. Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me back.
We are glad to have you. If we can just get into you telling me about what you do, or what the Organization of Addiction Prevention and Recovery Association of Kenya, what you do in there.
Oh, thank you very much about that. Yeah, I'm the current chairperson, actually the first chairperson of the Association of Rehab Centers. So there are quite a number of people who are silently, they observe a problem. If the government is too slow to do anything about it, they quickly start providing solutions for it. So we have quite a number, like 200 people around the country, or 200 groups, who over time have been involved in helping people who have an alcohol drug problem. There are some who are anonymous, like Alcoholic Anonymous, but then there are others who have now set up centers. So over time, in 2019, we thought that we should form an association that can help, advocacy issues with government, work closely with NACADA to supervise and internally regulate ourselves, work with county governments, because they are across the country, look at financial areas in which they can or get funding for their programs. So this informs the association. The association, why it was formed. It's like a conglomerate of a group of rehab centers across the country who would like to play a better role, but not as individuals, but as a group. Because they are the ones on the ground, they understand the problem, they are seeing it every day, they are a source of information for research and strategic information. That is why we formed the association. We're grateful to NACADA. They've been very supportive about the association.
Okay, what of the Leeds Eden House Group?
Oh yeah, that is how it started. So about 20 years ago, me and my co-directors met in a rehab center. This was just immediately after the elections of 2003. Must have been very young then. Then there was a lot of hope, just like we are having now with there was a lot of, just like what Dr. Rigathi is doing. 20 years ago, we had a little focus on from the government around helping street children and street families relocate and restart new lives. The country really wanted to reignite itself, and I was one of those people, because I had given up hope. I was a drug addict for a long time, like 10 years. I had lost jobs, I had lost my family, and the hope in the country dissipated in me, and I decided to do something about my addiction. And that's why I met my co-directors. We were in a rehab setting. One of us was our counselor, and we started discussing how we could expound on this, because it was more informed, structural, and we agreed that we were going to start something. That's how we got to start a halfway house. We called it Eden, and from there it has grown into 7 centers in 5 counties. I've helped over 5,000 people. and over 15,000 families. The inquiries we hear, the kind of support that we have given in Kwale, Mombasa, Voi, Nairobi and Kiambu. But now, since we have the Association of Rehab Centers, of which I'm chairman, there is no need to form everywhere. Okay. We just work with what we have and build on it. That's how we started Eden House. Yeah.
Okay. Last week you had mentioned to us how you got into drug addiction, or how you actually started abusing drugs, and it was by simply, you were still quite young, you were in your teen years, and you were just given by someone that you used to admire, someone who was a good football player, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
So that's how you got into drug abuse and eventually addiction. If you can just take us through that process of you getting into addiction. You know, you just start, it's like a joke, you just do it for fun. How did it get to being an addiction for you?
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. And I think this is it's even supported by the current research that was done in NACADA. A lot of people start on addiction. There's actually no one who sets out their mind. You know, like there are people watching you, Vivian, and think, oh, one day I would want to be a presenter on TV. There's no one, no child who would wake up and look at the TV and want to be a drug addict, live in the streets, be, that kind of an alcoholic or a drug addict. There is not one of them. There's nothing admirable about it. Yeah. So what is it that happens? What is it that happens between that group of young people growing up who never want to be anything like a loser, downtrodden, living in the streets, hungry, scamming off people, person? No, none. Yeah, none.
No one.
So how does it happen? What really happens? Yeah. And that has been studied. It starts very simply by some things we call gateway, harmless gateway drugs. Yeah, and usually it's by people we admire. Yeah, sometimes even family members. For me, it was one of the most admirable soccer players I had seen growing up, and he was playing for the national team. He was winning awards. People looked up to him everywhere he went. And I was a young footballer then. I was about 16, 17, and you know, monkey see, monkey do. Yeah. So one day he passed a cigarette to me. Cigarette. Just say, I have a puff. I coughed and he laughed and they had banter. Then I tried to show that actually the next puff I'm not going to cough. Yeah. I didn't start smoking then, but the next time he passed on something else, and it was Mira. The next time he wanted to treat me because I'm growing up. I'm 17 now, I'm becoming a better player, I'm following on his footsteps. He takes me out to drink one beer or two. All this looked harmless because maybe I was energetic. Most of the time I'm taken away by school, boarding school. I was in a very good school, Sarai Boys Center. We have very good, and that's the opposite of it now, very good people to follow through with. So when we finished Form 4, it's when I think that the gap years between that and university is when the problem really kind of started to show. Now in retrospect, but that's when we had more time on our hands. We didn't have these trainings that we now have. So very soon, it became not just a Friday, Saturday thing. Now it becomes habitual. Experimentation, then it became habitual. And then after that, it started taking more time. That is not even just Friday, so it's a progressive illness. Yeah? So within a short time, I was trying now, not just when there's no alcohol, I would drink hard stuff. And within time, some bangi is passed around. Yeah? And that is the same pattern that took effect until one day I was given heroin after the death of a very close person. It's a painkiller. That's my first day to use heroin is through the death of my mom, my foster mom. She was my auntie, and she reminded me of the death of my mom. And I had some childhood trauma, sometimes untreated childhood trauma can really show up. Now I understand that, but heroin just became like the perfect fit for me because it's a painkiller. It reduces even emotional pain. That's how I eventually took that path that made me, move from a potentially very successful person in football and sports. I was playing for the national team at 19. I was earning money from football, the first professional team. I know some of these players who played with me at that time. Very good players, like Kina Musa Otieno.
Oh, you played with Musa Otieno?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. That's how it went on. I eventually, and we have lost quite a number of sports people in this. Sports people, after they stopped playing football, the adrenaline rush that we look for in sports is replaced by for some of us, is replaced by substance abuse.
And I'd love to know, as you were getting into drugs, is no one noticing at home?
Yeah.
No one is noticing back home that, okay, there's some changes in this young man over here. Was no one noticing it?
No. I think by the time they were noticing, it was a little too late. And maybe now, those are solutions we're talking about now.
Yeah.
There should be people watching. Our communities have disintegrated a lot. I come from my mom was a single mama, and she died when I was very young. So there was no father figure in our family. And with the disintegration of our society, we don't have this community approach where father figure can take over and start to look after you. So there was no one really, no adults watching, no senior person trying to say, hey, stop a little bit, what's going on? And those are the kind of interventions that we need to start with. For me, it's very unfortunate that by the time the family was trying to make an intervention, it was already late. I was a heroin addict already. I was almost losing my job. And I was saying, this guy is getting lost. My wife is gone. My child, she has gone with the child. Jobs, I've started going to hospital. I've started being sent on compulsory, go get help kind of stuff. I'm not there at home. I'm a heroin addict. It was already late. Yes, it was just a matter of time before they also told me now, tembea na Yesu.
And from what you're telling me, it's clear that they noticed very late, because now you're talking about wife, children, you're talking about jobs, and you started this thing while you were still a teenager at 17, 18, 19. So what is the problem? What should be done? What are some of the solutions? Maybe if we just get into the solutions, what are some of the solutions that should be taken beginning from home, just home?
Yes. First. Okay, let's focus on that age group, because that's the most... I even heard you earlier because I was seated there and you're reading news and you talked about universities becoming places where
lots of death are happening.
Lots are happening. A lot. Yeah. That is the university, colleges, and the surrounding neighborhoods where these kids live are becoming the hotspots of the brewing of addictions and mental health issues, their comorbidity. And I also want to, Pastor Doka has really done well to focus on the vulnerable communities. I would like her to put a little bit more focus, Nakada also, on that community. Because we have to have specific interventions targeting that age group between 18 and 24, or between 16 and 24, specific interventions. Yeah? We cannot just allow ati where uliambiwa you should follow. We have to have interventions, and these interventions can be done in a way that in places like Israel, you have groups of people who work with that kind of problem, and they send them to parties, places where these people drink, where they live. There's always somebody watching over that population. If you start drifting, because there is a placement criteria or a way of looking through the nature of the problem and the development of the problem, and interventions in between. So early, brief interventions are very critical for this population. Yeah? So trained, like I've I've heard recently, last week, when we were here with you, the same days when they were launching the community health workers. And I would really want Nakada and the county governments to really train these community health workers around addiction issues and interventions around this population, this population of people who are drinking. And it's not to stop them, because young people will always experiment. They will always start developing habitual behaviors. But what are we doing about it? Yeah, what are we doing about it? Are we able to identify the ones that are developing a problem? Are we able to do interventions early? Are we able to separate and provide community-based interventions? Those are critical in our moving forward, and there are programs around that. NACADA, I think, is now working at community-based rehabilitation programs. Are developing the modules for that, and those are the lower cost end of things that need to be done for that population. Now there's a younger population that we can do a lot of prevention work between the ages of 0 and 8. A lot of kids, even looking through my own life, I can see that some of the parental skills were missing from parents. Neglect, abandonment, no guidance of young children, and that is where some of these things form. And it's not just for poor populations or people who are of little means. And many parents between the age of 0 to 8 have abdicated their responsibilities to their children. They are not available to their children. They are busy working, looking for money. They forget to connect with the child at that time. And some of these underlying issues start to develop at that time. A child loses confidence. They start to look at they are probably abused by their nanny, and within a short time, when they are 17, 18, they're always looking at somebody else to help them sort out their problems. So what we do between the ages of 0 and 8, how we equip parents, and NACADA has done a good job with that. In their last report, I saw that they had reached out to close to 10 million parents across the country. I hope we need to build on that to know what content families ought to. And that's why, again, I think the community health workers would be a very great ideal persons to reach out to these 100 homes who can actually inform and educate families on how to prevent addiction and prevent other diseases by bringing
from
up
such
healthy.
an early age.
Yes.
Okay. And speaking about that, the age group that you've just spoken about, I remember last week you were here with Anne Mathu from NACADA, and for her, she said that she took her first drink at the young age, at a very early age, at only 9 years. She took her first drink of alcohol, and this drink was given to her by her father. Yes, by the dad. So, I mean, how do we go about that? If it's, someone may assume maybe a drug problem or a drug problem may come in later on in your teen years, but if we look at it, there are people who get into drugs from as early as 8 years old, 9 years old. So how do we equip parents really? Yes,
you see, and again, this is where the society really comes in to set up a support system. In certain countries, if you start showing that kind of behavior, if a parent is already an alcoholic because they have a problem, so they should get help themselves, or they have they're functional alcoholics, and they're risking this observation by the children and neglecting their children are usually taken away from them. So development of foster families and support of foster families. And traditionally, we Africans had a way in which uncles, aunties, relatives took care of each other. So if we can find a way in which the government or the county government support this as a way of fostering and developing spaces where parents are taken to task about their parental. Sometimes I actually think people should get a certificate before they get children. Some people should actually go through a course.
There should be an improvement of now you are qualified to become a parent.
Yes, because these people are going to affect the community. Do you know how much, if you really Do you know the cost of it? You know, some people have calculated. 6% of the GDP is wasted. You know, these people are going to be future homeowners. They are going to buy cars. Their economies. When they are brought up already from this word go, they are disadvantaged. Yeah? They are disadvantaged. They are pathological. They are brought up in pathology, in a community that it's almost like a curse. That's why you see where science is very nuanced about research. It is possible to even identify hotspots in communities where these things happen a lot. You can tell that these people are going to develop. Science has been done. They follow through the lives of people over time. That's why some people say in the US, the black community neighborhoods, it's almost like a generational curse that repeats itself. Becomes a disease over a period of time, because the children will follow up after their deceased parents, watching how they behave and how the attitudes that they have, and that disadvantage moves on. Somebody has to break it, and the government interventions can start intervening as early as possible. So yes, we should have family courts. We should have interventions to protect children. The school and adult parents of even communities should be encouraged. You know, it doesn't take just your father. You know, if your father or mother are not responsible and are the ones now creating this environment, it just requires an uncle or a neighbor who is an adult to start stepping into the life of this person, because that's what that kid needs. It doesn't have to be the actual parent. So if you're a sober human in a community, maybe we should develop programs for such. Start taking responsibility for your community. Start looking out for kids in your neighborhood who have been neglected, and we see them. We just, because of the new attitudes of life these days, no one apart from, again, I want to shower Dr. Rigathi, and we need to really support her programs, Dr. Dorcas. Yeah, apart from her and other people who have worked with these populations, we just need to restart to look at and see our responsibility in nurturing, guiding, and providing a better example where we see families are already in distraught. Yes.
Yeah, and I get you on that, because there are people who are into drugs or who are abusing drugs at the moment, and it ties from where they come from. You know, they grew up seeing that in their family. All their uncles drink alcohol. They're, you know, addicts to alcohol. All their aunties, the mom, the dad, like, it seems like it's genetic. So for them, even if you start talking to them about you should stop drinking and all that, they would wonder, why should I stop? I mean, everyone else in my lineage is doing that or has been doing that. So what makes you think that I am the one who's supposed to break this curse? So maybe to someone who is in that situation, what would you tell them, where they feel like, who said I'm the one who's supposed to break this curse? And let me call it a curse. Who said that I am responsible for that? Why not the next generation? What would you say to that person if they're watching us right now and they're from a family that is full of addicts, and they're starting to get into that, you know, line as well? How do they get out of it?
Yes, thank you for that. There have been some theories around that. Some people think that there is a genetic predisposition to addiction, and there are some who think, you know, the argument about nurture and nature, and some people just think that they have that predisposition to using. Yeah, and yes, you can have that predisposition to using, but if you don't use, if you don't put that X factor plus the drink, then you won't have a problem, because you can see the results, unless you want to be like what you see. Then and maybe that is what I could help with, you know, highlight We have a thing we call playing the movie to the end. So for a young person who is developing a problem, you can show them the progression of the problem in their lives, and just play that movie for them to see, highlight the information and educate. Secondly, you can for sure that path has been trodden. You can redirect that energy to something positive, something called positive psychology among that youthful population. How do we engage these people in ways that they receive the same thing they're looking for in a drink or a drug, but in sports, in education, in extracurricular activities, in long time ago, communities, and I think now communities are being rebuilt around that, had a way in which they would provide self-worth, self-esteem by engaging these populations in productive stuff. In our country now, we're beginning to see that there is something about environment that we can get engaged in positively. There's something about a good health. There's exercise we can do. We can go hiking. Opening opportunities for positive engagement of the populations, these young populations that are experimenting on drugs, and refocusing that energy in that direction can divert people towards the harm that is awaiting them ahead of the game. Yeah.
What would you say is the proper age for parents to start talking to their kids about drugs? Because if you ask me, growing up, no one really talked to me about drugs. I don't remember being sat down by my mom or my dad and being told, there are things called drugs, there's alcohol and this, and the effects of it and why I should not get into them and all. So when is the appropriate age, and is this a discussion that should be had in every home?
Interesting. Yes, there's a structured level of information that can be used as a guiding tool for what level of information you need to discuss with what age group. So when I trained in Israel, they had something to do between the 4 and 9, but it's just certain level of information that is helpful for that population, not the total. No. Information that mind can be able to comprehend, and the attitudes that come with it, even the self-expression that is allowed, the ability, support protective factors that can build this child to be able to internally make decisions. That's why kids who are brought up well have a lot of confidence, able to express themselves, but kids who are shut down are likely to develop a problem. So development of proactive, yes, that's one. Now between the age of 10 and 14, there's a certain also level of engagement that is different. Then there's a young adult age group between 16 and 24. That's where now there's nothing being done, that we really need to scale up our operations. That is where they're experimenting, developing habits. They are free, they have some money, and that is where the engagement and the brew of the problem is, if nothing is done. And then, of course, between the after 24 is now just either people have to seek rehab, which is very expensive. The cost to the economy is very high, as I mentioned, 6%. Interventions, if put to place, can reduce 6% to 3% of GDP, and it becomes very expensive to manage these people. Rehabilitation is very expensive for them. So for the younger lot, it's best to invest. As they say, 1 shilling spent on prevention saves about 9 in treatment. So the earlier we start engaging with our young ones, the better. Yeah,
prevention is better than cure.
Yes, prevention is definitely better than cure. Yes, because the costs are eventually everyone pays. Everyone pays. Have you heard of like the young girls who are left out in communities and are not taken care of, and then they get HIV, and then they spread it in the communities. So communities where there's drug addiction and alcoholism have higher rates of HIV infection. So we end up paying end up paying the cost of insurance, the whole community end up. So doing early interventions makes sense. Investing in county governments, investing the money that they collect on bar licenses.
Okay, I'll ask you to hold that thought. We take a break, but we'll be back to continue with this conversation. Welcome back and thank you for staying tuned. In studio with me is Mr. Boniface Ndirango, and he is here to talk to us about the drug menace that is in the country at the moment. And we just try to see where are the loopholes and what are some of the solutions to this problem? How do we eradicate drug abuse and addiction in the country? If I may ask you, what is contributing to this menace? Why is it that we have such a high number? 1.7 million people are a lot of people to have who are being said, according to statistics, they are using multiple drugs, not just one drug. 1.7 people are using multiple drugs. What is contributing to this?
Yeah, a number of course, thanks Vivian. A number of reasons. Yeah? A number of reasons. There's been a very, and this is not happening in Kenya only. Yeah? Even the drugs that you see that are being used here usually are being copied online. So there's quite a bit of the influence of online, what drugs are being used outside. Sometimes even, there was a time they were talking about these drugs and I was telling them to be careful about how much information you give, because it just sometimes can create a lot of curiosity. So there is something about availability of information and what drugs are being abused and that new people are trying. That is one. Yeah. But two, there is definitely a shift of our society from how it used to be and what it is. So around the world you'll see many things like that happening in India, in Thailand, in other developing countries, where the shift from communal living and support systems around community are moving into urban areas. In fact, that is how this problem really started in Kenya. In 1904, in 1904, there was a high alert by the government of I think 1924, not 1904, alert that the young people in Nairobi are drinking a lot. What's going on? Because culturally Africans were not allowed to drink. So there's that shift. Then secondly, whenever there is a serious economic shift, there is a pressure that comes with that, and people want to avoid or want to avoid how they feel and want to change how they feel, and that is the sense of addiction, development of that problem. Our cultures also have shifted towards, if you think about it, those age groups where we don't have alternative engagement to that young population. That contributes. A long time ago we used to have sports club, we used to have community areas for recreation, we used to have, now there's less of that. So people are enclosed, the only way they know how is to go and watch Man U playing Crystal Palace, and in the process there's a bar around, and that is the culture of drinking develops from there. It becomes the only kind of outlet available, even for people who don't like to drink. So we need, as a community, to really redevelop some of those alternatives, like environment, walking, developing targeted programs that explore this. So that is another. I've also seen a lot of people now developing urban areas and communities where they develop this. They make sure that their urban area has a swimming pool in the building. It has all the things that the people need in that. There's a place to play football, 7-a-side. So the people who are developing communities, or like the new housing model that is coming up, needs to make sure that there are spaces, green spaces, where we capture this energy. Like the housing, we must also agree that quite a number of people cannot live by themselves. Some people need structured support living. So we need to engage as a county government and a Ministry of Housing to develop a model around every community where there are some homes available for people who need to be supported to be able to live. Some people are not capable of living by themselves. They just need support systems. They have structure, and there's modules for that. So certain interventions have to be deliberate to intervene. And it's not just about giving. It is, in the long run, as I mentioned earlier, the cost exceeds. If we do, the cost of doing nothing exceeds the cost of the investments to provide. For example, they are building 70,000 homes now in Mukuru kwa Jenga. Why can't 1% of those homes be for community, for people who need supportive living, for people who need to be guided and supported to recover and to live? Mental health and addictions are intertwined, and they have a big impact on the communities.
So the main thing contributing to drug addiction in the country is the lack of community, according to you.
Yes, that is one. Interventions, proper community interventions. Of course, yes, I think that is perhaps the most
That's the main thing. If we sort that, then we'll be okay. Okay, you've touched on alcoholism, and I feel like if there's a problem in this, one of the problems we have in this country, and there was a statistic that was out also just the other day, where they were showing that young people are drinking more. They're really drinking more now in the country, especially in Nairobi. And, you know, we just take it as normal sometimes, you know, like you just have a drink. It's something, it's a social thing you do, you know, it's not really, you know, a problem as that. So when exactly does it become a problem? Because drinking, I was joking with someone the other day where I was saying, when you tell someone you're drinking, it's no big deal. But when you say, I don't drink, then it becomes, why? How come you do not drink? Because it's been taken to be something that is so usual. It is so casual. So when does it become a problem? As when does an individual realize that, okay, actually, alcohol to me is not just something I do to pass time. It is actually a problem now.
Very good. Number one, you know, addiction is characterized by three things. One, an obsession of the mind. So when you figure out that though you don't drink on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but all that you're thinking about on Monday is how Friday will come, then it becomes, well, it starts becoming an obsession of the mind. It's internal. You have to look at yourself. Are you beginning to obsess about it? Is the drink becoming a serious part of your thinking and thinking about it? Those are early signs. So that when you think about fun, the only thing you think about is when we are going to meet Kina Vivian and nani weekend, and then on Monday you're talking about what happened last week. Then you know it's taking up a bigger proportionate of your mind, and you know that's where decisions are made. So an obsession of the mind. And sometimes, you know, we have also there are emerging addictions, Vivian. It's not just about substance abuse like alcohol. And the trends have also shown lately, like you mentioned, that marijuana actually has doubled. Yes, the acceptability of it, the pressure online to legalize it, the availability. These days you don't have to know a dealer. You just go online and you'll find somebody who can distribute it for you. There are people who just bring bags with a piki in your house, and they're drug dealers. They don't even know what they are bringing. Delivering. Yes, those are the new online ways of distribution that have come up. So the young population, has found itself in very tricky situations now. New tricky ways in which they can access. It's affordable, it's available. So that was number one. Number two is compulsion to behave. So when you find that you have started to feel like you have to, it gets to Friday after 2 p.m. and you have to go and have a drink. You feel like you need to go and have a drink. That there is nothing else you want to do, you just want to have that drink. That compulsive behavior becomes a key indicator. Yeah? Key indicator of the problem. So I didn't intend to drink much. I only wanted to have 2, then I ended up having 6. Or I've ended up now spending all the money that I was supposed to pay school fees with. Or I've ended up using a lot of time I had no intention of. I wanted to study over the weekend, but the drink took over. Now that compulsion of behavior is and last but not least, is that despite the negative consequences of the drinking, I still continue to do it. Yeah, you know, yesterday I did a mistake. I slept with somebody I didn't plan to. I don't even know whether I used a condom. And that makes you drink even more. Yeah? Now you know the things are...
It's actually a problem.
Yes. Mambo ni matatu.
As you put it.
Ya kwanza, I think the obsession of the mind.
Yeah.
And 2, compulsion to behave. And 3,
when you keep doing it even after there are negative effects,
then you know you are headed.
You have a problem.
The earlier we start having interventions, the brief interventions for that group of people, the more we are going to save. Because that is a sure bet. Sure bet. It will just take shape. It's just different. It just move. It can just mutate from marijuana, from cigarette smoking to marijuana to drinking hard liquor to using emerging drugs. Any drug that will make you high. Yes.
And speaking about any drug that will make you high, there's a feature I saw just the other day, actually yesterday, on drug abuse, and it is being shown that people are actually mixing drugs for themselves, you know, like prescription drugs. They go take different prescription drugs that are used maybe for, that are strong painkillers and so on, and then they mix it up with maybe some known drugs like heroin or cocaine and all that. They mix it up. So my thinking on this is, are there regulations put in place for prescription drugs? Like, how come I can just go to a chemist and ask for this and this and this and this drug? Are there regulations for that? Because as we've seen, people are using that, you know, to get themselves high. It's not like they need those drugs, you know, for a certain illness or something. They're just going to get several of them, mix it up, and then sell them.
It's a very deep question you have asked, and it actually goes to what we are really proposing for NACADA to do more. There's 2 theories around this. There's the supply suppression theory and the demand reduction theory. The supply suppression is what you're just mentioning. How available are these drugs, especially psychoactive substances, and what regulates. So the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, the administration, doctors, pharmacists who sell this stuff. And you can tell from the proliferation of chemists. Now those are the legal drug dealers. Drug dealers, that are actually legally allowed to sell drugs. So some of those substances, when profit is the only motive, they will sell. They'll sell any of those drugs. So we need to really firm up and a system of following through who has what. It can be integrated. We have computer systems these days that you can integrate, and there has to be purposeful body that is genuine. What's our corruption? The proliferation of drugs as a trafficking area, you know, that has, we have to have very genuine people in those places who are looking at that supply suppression strategy. That is number one. But the most important among all this is a demand reduction. Perhaps the most important strategy towards supply suppression is to cut out the demand. And cutting out the demand is providing solutions to those addicted people. Those people you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because those people are at a catch-22 place. They cannot do without it. I'm a former heroin addict, I know very well.
Yeah.
There is no way they will, unless you intervene and help them get away from this addiction. And that is what we should be doing at this time.
Yeah.
Because there's a shortage due to supply strategies that have been used by this government, and the focus on by Professor Kindiki and his PS has really helped to reduce the availability of these hard drugs. The consequence is that the addiction demands that you use something. So if you are not providing a service equally that will mitigate this demand, then you are actually sending these kids to early death. So we need to develop programs like the ones Her Excellence, and this is NACADA now should, because there's even a fund for this. There's a, if you read the Narcotics Psychotropic Drugs Act, there is a rehabilitation fund that is in that law that actually taxes and takes money that have been used by suppliers and dealers to go towards rehabilitation. That's the kind of fund that should be activated to support these people through the court system. It's a system that has been set, it has just not been activated. That's where the Ministry of Interior, prisons, the courts, alternate to incarceration, and this fund to specifically pick up these populations and provide the services. We, as the Association of Rehab Centers, have the expertise and we will provide the support systems for helping with the rehabilitation. But we need interventions like those ones Her Excellency is doing. We can't just sit back and watch and complain and do nothing. These guys are dying and they will use anything, anything. Yeah, because the pain is too much. The kind of pain that an addict goes through from withdrawals have been described by
it's actually physical pain.
Yes, physical pain. If you read, I read this when I was in that kind of pain. I read Psalms 38. And if you read Psalms 38, you'll see David, it's like he was going through withdrawals. The pain is physical, very severe withdrawals. It is spiritual, it's emotional, it is mental, it is torture. There's a guy who has written a book called A Million Little Pieces, of describing how that person feels, that addicted person who's now dependent on drugs. Because heroin is one of the most serious, most addictive painkillers in this world. So we need to develop interventions. We can't just withdraw the drugs. There are some countries which even provide the heroin to their in a clinical manner. They bring them to a hospital setting and provide clean needles, provide clean heroin, and then weed them off over time. With the rehabilitation.
Do we have enough rehabilitation centers in the country?
We have, and they are not even enough. We don't even have a capacity to deal with 5% of the problem. We have a capacity to deal with about 10,000 beds at this time. 10,000 beds. Majority of the rehab centers are very expensive for the average person. There is no fund available to. There is resources available, but have not been targeted to these people to provide this service. So we need to have that. 5% is too little. The problem is too huge. Interventions are a crisis that needs to be coordinated, and the best person to deal with this is NACADA as a body, to develop programs where they collect these people. We can use the prison system, we can use medical system, we can use the available youth programs and spaces and public spaces, and bring together medics, multi-sectoral approach, addiction counselors, social workers, and provide a service that is critically needed at this time, especially at the coast. We can't just be watching this thing day in, day out, every Sunday. It's also very traumatizing for populations to see how how others are hurting. We need to develop those programs.
True.
Like today.
Yeah. And just according to you, how far in are we in the fight of drug addiction and finding solutions to it? How far are we in the fight?
Kenya has been lauded around the world and in Africa as one of the most focused, and this administration especially has been lauded as one of the most progressive. Progressive. One of even the media. I must thank you very much, because lately, the last 6 months have seen a serious focus by media houses on the addiction issues. The country's two top leaders are very keen on this. The administration is very keen on it. We just need the involvement and programs. That is the area that needs a little more nuanced approach, or experienced people who know how to mitigate against this, especially the area of treatment and prevention. That is where I think the focus should move, because that will have an impact.
Yeah.
There, I can say we are at less than 5%, and that is really bad. Less than 5% is really bad. We need people who know what they're doing in that area to focus on this kind of programs that collect, If we have an education system that supports, I don't know, 100,000 of people at a go in boarding schools, it's very possible to bring down costs and provide a service, an intervention that will save lives. Because out of these lives, we'll have the economy. It's the economy, because a guy like me would have died from addiction if nothing was done. And now I'm a serious participant in the economy. I mean, I consume, I pay taxes, I support my children. The difference, those investing in those programs in the long run is beneficial to all of us. So it is not just about helping, wasting money on no. It's about saving. It's about not just saving lives. It's also about saving the country's costs, reducing the costs. Even if you don't have no emotions, then use economics. You look at it economically and you'll see, we need to invest in these programs.
Do we have the capacity to do that?
Yes, we do. The only one of the biggest problems I find in our country is our human resource allocation. Many people do the jobs that they are not qualified to do. They are not trained to do. They are not passionate to do. They just do for a job. And when we do that, that's why we get in trouble. You find people who are running the administrations, which are supposed to lead into reduction of substance abuse, are people who have just been placed there by their connections, been put up there by their families or their connections to get a job, to earn a living. So if the country was to find a way to match people who are passionate about what they do, in our area we are quite a number. I mean, some don't even come on TV. Perhaps one of the 1% come on TV, but there's people who can work in that field. So finding, just like these media houses, if you are to choose people who don't like to do what you do, I mean, the production and the services will be so low in quality. You have to have a passion. We need to figure out a way in which our country gets the right people for the right jobs. Not, and that is the biggest problem we have. We don't have the right people doing the jobs that are required. 20 years on since the formation of our Nakada Authority. It is very sad to see that Her Excellency has done in the last 6 months, probably more.
So you're calling out Nakada right now. You're calling them out.
It is historical. And they are facts. Because, they are facts. Facts can't lie. Facts don't hide. And it's not even Nakada I want to... but they can follow. They can see. See if this one lady can come up and do all this in a very short period of time. Okay. As we finish, very quickly, just what role can we each play in this fight? In very few words. Very few words. One, if you have a problem, which is very possible, for you to seek help and get help, and help is possible, and we do recover. So anyone who is watching me, just know I'm a former heroin addict. I have got help. I've helped more than 5,000 people. There are many people around the world who have had this kind of problem, and there's a way in which you can seek help and get help.
Okay.
Two.
Thank you.
Yes. Family members.
Okay.
Family members, I would like you to know too that our people get better. If somebody has a problem, get the help they need. Nudge them towards the help. Do not throw them away. Do not give up on life. People, as long as they're alive, they're capable of changing. 3, if you don't mind.
We need to finish.
Society at large, we need to have county government and people who develop programs that are nuanced to dealing with these issues.
Okay.
And they should invest the little resources they have that are geared towards that area.
Okay.
For that.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Boniface. And as you've heard from him, he has really enlightened us on this particular topic, on drug addiction and the solutions to it. Thank you so much for coming to the program. Right now, we take a short break.